Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. I'd been working at KFC since I was 16, through the greasy blur of high school and now into college. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my gas tank full and helped with textbooks. Plus, I kind of liked the routine. The place was a 5-minute bike ride from my apartment, and I knew it like the back of my hand. I could tell when the dinner rush would hit just by the smell of the fryer oil. I knew which regulars wanted extra pickles without asking. Hell, I even knew the weird little quirks. The way the ice machine made a stuttering click-click thump before dumping a fresh load, or how you had to jiggle the front door handle just right, or it'd stick like it was glued shut. Most nights blurred, together in a haze of grease-stained aprons, drive-through headsets, and half-wiped counters. Sure, we had the occasional weirdos, a drunk guy passed out in a booth, some guy flipping out over one missing honey mustard, the usual petty theft. Nothing that stuck with me longer than a few hours. Until that night. It was a Wednesday, dead, slow. I'd been stuck on drive-through duty for most of the shift, my headset digging into my scalp and static humming in one ear. By 10:30, we were barely seeing a car every 10 minutes. I was just counting the minutes till 11, zoning out, elbows on the counter, when I noticed it. A van. Old, late 90s maybe. The kind with peeling beige paint and those too dark, probably illegal tinted windows. It had been sitting there, for a while, long enough that I should have noticed it earlier. At first, I figured it belonged to someone inside, but the lobby was almost empty. Just 2 teenagers scrolling on their phones, and a guy in a delivery uniform scarfing down his last bite of a famous bowl. Something about that van bugged me. I wiped down the counter and nudged Will, my coworker. "You think someone's sleeping in that thing?" I asked, nodding toward the window. Will looked up, squinting. "Could be," he muttered. "Or just waiting on someone." "Waiting for who, though?" I said, mostly to myself. He shrugged, already back to scrubbing a fryer tray. I tried to let it go. People hung out in parking lots. Maybe someone was waiting for a friend closing up at the vape shop next door. But still, I kept glancing at it. The van never moved. No lights on inside. No movement. Then, at 10:50, the front door chimed. I looked up and instantly wished I hadn't. The man who stepped in didn't belong. You ever get that feeling? Like your brain screams wrong before your eyes can even figure out why? That was him. He looked like he'd walked out of a thrift store nightmare. Baggy suit jacket, sleeves drooping past his wrists, a dirty white shirt with a yellowed collar, pants so worn they were almost translucent at the knees. His shoes didn't match. One black, one brown, and his hair was stringy and slicked to his forehead like he'd just come in from the rain. But it hadn't rained all day. What really froze me, though, was his face. Expressionless. Like someone had erased all the normal cues. No smile, no frown, no tension. Just blank. His eyes didn't move like normal either. They didn't scan the menu or look around for where to stand. They didn't even seem to register me. They just stared straight ahead. Right through me. I forced myself to breathe and pushed out the usual line. "Hey, welcome to KFC. If you're ready to order, just let me know." Nothing. He stood there, silent. Then, in a slow, gravelly voice that didn't quite match his thin frame, he said, "What time do you close?" I blinked. 11. He gave one slow nod, then turned and walked back out the door. I watched him disappear into that battered old van, my gut twisting tight. The headlights flared for a heartbeat, then flicked off. He hadn't left. He was just sitting there, engine off, lurking in the dark. I told myself he was just some strange guy, maybe homeless, just trying to keep warm. Harmless. Weird, sure, but harmless. By 11:05, the last of the customers had trickled out. Mike, our manager, was hunched over the office desk counting tills. Will was up to his elbows in fryer grease, scrubbing hard. I offered to take the trash out, mostly to get a few breaths of cold air and shake off the feeling gnawing at my spine. I hauled Out two heavy bags, pushed through the metal back door and stepped into the night. It was quiet. Too quiet. The buzz of the street lights above was the only sound, like flies trapped in a jar. I started toward the dumpster, boots crunching on the gravel. Then I stopped. A shadow moved. It shifted just behind the dumpster, subtle, like someone shifting their weight. My breath caught in my throat. I gripped the trash bags tighter, squinting into the dark. Then I saw it. Just a flash. The toe of a shoe, scuffed white, the laces untied, vanishing back behind the metal bin. Someone was there. They didn't want to be seen. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I took one step back, then another. Eyes locked on the dumpster, I moved like prey. My breath sounded like thunder in my ears, and then instinct took over. I turned and ran. I bolted through the back door, slammed it shut behind me, twisted the lock with shaking hands. "Mike," I gasped, bursting into the office. "Someone's outside, behind the dumpster." Mike frowned, standing up so fast his chair squeaked. "You sure?" "Yes." I saw them, hiding. Without a word, he grabbed Will and they headed out the front, trying to loop around and catch whoever it was. Stayed behind alone. The silence inside suddenly felt suffocating. I stood behind the drive-through register, nerves shot, every sound feeling sharp and wrong. Then I saw it. Movement. Out of the corner of my eye, something at the drive-through window. I turned my head slowly. He was there. The man from earlier. Just inches from the glass, his face as lifeless and empty as before, those dead eyes locked onto mine. His breath didn't fog the window. His body was too still, like a photo come to life. And in his hands, a dead raccoon, bloodied, limp, its fur matted and slick. Without warning, he slammed it against the glass. Thump. Again. Thump. And again. Thump. I couldn't move. Couldn't blink. The wet, dull sound echoed through the restaurant. My skin crawled. My mouth went dry. He grinned, that same awful, empty grin. Then he said it. "I know your name." My name tag. He'd read my damn name tag. I stumbled backward, heart in my throat, nearly tripping over the mop bucket. "Mike! Will!" I shouted, sprinting toward the front as they came back in. "He's at the window. He's hitting the glass with... He's..." We rushed back to the drive-thru, all three of us, but he was gone. Vanished. The window was smeared with blood, a red stain dripping down the glass. The cops arrived 20 minutes later. We gave them the security footage. They ran the van's plates. It had been reported stolen 3 weeks ago. By a woman 2 towns over. Whoever the man was, he left no prints, no trail. Just a streak of blood and a memory I'll never scrub clean. I never saw him again. But every time I work a late shift, I catch myself staring out at the lot. Watching. Waiting. Because I know one day he might come back. And next time, I don't think he'll just be watching. I hadn't been home in over a year. Work, life, and everything in between had swallowed up my time. But now, with a rare 3-day weekend and a little guilt gnawing at me, I was finally making the trip back. My parents still lived in the same, weathered house across the state, nestled in a sleepy town that barely showed up on most maps. It was a 6-hour drive, one I'd hoped to power through without stopping. That was the plan, anyway. By early afternoon, hunger made its case loud and clear. My stomach growled like a caged animal, reminding me I hadn't eaten since morning. I spotted a faded KFC sign up ahead, poking out from a cluster of tall grass off a quiet highway exit. It was one of those standalone spots, small, slightly, forgotten, like it had sprouted from the asphalt and been left behind by time. I considered the drive-thru, but my girlfriend had made me swear I wouldn't eat in her car again, not after the whole nacho cheese incident. So with a resigned sigh, I parked and stepped inside. The place was nearly empty. The air smelled of fryer grease and something faintly sweet like old coleslaw. A single woman stood behind the counter, mid-60s maybe, her short gray curls tucked under a hairnet. She looked up as I entered, her lined face creasing into a smile that felt too warm for such an empty place. "Afternoon, hun. What can I get you?" she asked in a voice that reminded me of my third-grade teacher. "Just a Pepsi and some tenders," I said, trying not to sound awkward. "Back in a sec," she replied cheerfully, ringing me up and vanishing behind the swinging kitchen door. I picked a booth by the window, sipping my drink as I watched the road. The field stretched forever in every direction, wind brushing through the dry stalks. Storm clouds were rolling in, big, heavy ones, darkening the sky like spilled ink. I silently hoped I'd be back on the road before the downpour hit. That's when I noticed the limousine. At first, I thought it was just another car pulling off the highway, but as it drew closer, I realized how wrong I was. It was a limo, long, black, and dusty, the kind of car that probably hadn't seen a wedding or prom in decades. Its glossy sheen was dulled, as if the road itself had tried to erase it. It rumbled to a stop directly in front of the restaurant. The driver's door creaked open. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a wedding dress. Not just any dress. It looked like it had cost thousands, all delicate lace and hand-stitched details. But it was filthy. The hem was soaked in mud and streaked with something darker, something reddish. Her veil had slipped sideways, tangled in messy blonde curls. She walked slowly, deliberately, right toward the entrance. I turned my gaze back to my drink, pretending not to notice, but when the door chimed, I couldn't help it. I looked up. She stared right at me. Despite everything, ruined makeup, mascara running in black rivers down her face, she was beautiful. Or maybe it was something else. There was a haunted sort of elegance to her, like a ghost who hadn't realized she was dead. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, her voice soft but frayed at the edges like she'd been screaming hours ago. Sure," I said, my voice catching, slightly. She slid into the booth across from me, carefully smoothing the skirt of her gown as if this were a candlelit restaurant instead of a half-forgotten KFC. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The overhead lights buzzed faintly. Somewhere in the kitchen, grease crackled. I wanted to ask if she was okay, if she needed help, if someone had hurt her. But there was something about her expression, like she already knew the answers. And she was waiting to see if I did too. The story was worse than I thought. She broke the silence first, her voice almost a whisper. "Am I hideous?" The question hit me like a slap. I blinked at her, stunned. "No," I said quickly, shaking my head. "Not at all." She watched me, her fingers idly circling the rim of a salt shaker, chipped and smeared with leftover grease. "Are you attracted to me?" she asked. I choked on my Pepsi, the carbonation burning my throat. What? James said he was. She cut in, her voice flat. But he was a liar. "James," I echoed. "My fiancé," she said, almost smiling. But it didn't quite touch her eyes. They were hollow, like something inside her had burned out. I nodded slowly, unsure of what to say or do. "You're sweet," she murmured. Then, without warning, she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I flinched. Her lace gloves, what was left of them, were stained deep maroon, the unmistakable color of dried blood. The fabric clung to her skin like a second rotting layer. I tried to pull away, but she gripped tighter. "Let's run away together, Tom." My blood ran cold. I hadn't told her my name. I swallowed hard. I really need to get going. Before I could finish, the old woman from behind the counter returned, balancing a red plastic tray with my order. Her eyes fell on the bride's hand gripping mine, then flicked to my face. There was something sharp and knowing in her stare. "Well, don't you look lovely?" she said slowly. "Thank you," the bride answered, though her grip tightened, like a vice. "But my friend Tom and I were talking. Please leave." The worker held her polite smile, the kind you see in church foyers and PTA meetings, warm on the surface but with a cold steel underneath. Without a word, she turned and walked back to the kitchen. I inched my body sideways, angling toward the door. The bride stood up so fast the table shook. "You're leaving me too?" she barked. "No," I lied, forcing a grin. I left something in my car." She stared at me, head tilted, then she smiled. "I'll walk with you." I kept my breathing slow, calm, like nothing was wrong, even though every nerve in my body screamed otherwise. We stepped outside together, into the heavy silence before a storm. As we passed the limo, I glanced at it again. The front fender was caved in. Blood streaked across the metal in thick smears. My stomach twisted. She caught my glance. Her voice was chipper. "That was our best man," she said. Or, what was left of him. My mouth went dry. "I caught him kissing James," she added, stopping in the middle of the parking lot. I nodded slowly, heart pounding. I knew she was waiting for me to say something. "I'm sure. He deserved it," I muttered. Her face lit up. "He did. James is in the back. Want to see him?" I forced out a laugh, fake and cracked. Let's not talk about James. You deserve better." She beamed like I'd just told her the sun shone for her alone. We reached my car. My hands were shaking. "I'll just grab I started. Then I yanked the door open and jumped in. Before I could slam it shut, she grabbed it. "You're leaving me too," she whispered. I jammed the key toward the ignition, fumbling, but she moved faster. She punched me. My head cracked against the steering wheel and my keys tumbled to the floor. "You're just like James," she screamed. Then she lunged at me. Her hands locked around my throat, nails digging deep, tearing at skin. Her strength was inhuman. My vision blurred. I gasped for air that wouldn't come. The world tilted sideways. Then, bang. The sound shattered the air. She froze, then collapsed in a heap against the car door. I coughed violently, clutching my throat. The old woman from the KFC stood just outside, shotgun raised, face unreadable. "Back. Inside, hun," she said calmly. "We need to call the police." I stumbled out of the car, the scent of gunpowder and blood thick in the air. The storm cracked overhead, and suddenly, I wasn't hungry anymore. I never imagined slinging chicken at a KFC would end up messing with my head like this. I'd been working there just over a year, mostly night shifts. It was supposed to be temporary, just a placeholder while I figured out what the hell I wanted to do with my life. The nights blurred together. Clock in, fry chicken, deal with a handful of half-bored customers, clean up, clock out. Same old routine. The pay was crap, sure, but it kept my rent paid and the fridge half-stocked. I wasn't tight with anyone at work, but we got by. Lisa was cool, quiet, hard-working. Tony, the manager, was this grizzled ex-army guy who ran the place like a tight ship. Didn't smile much, but he had your back if you did your job. I respected that. Most nights were dead quiet, which I liked. Fewer customers meant less BS. But about a month back, things started getting strange. It began with Instagram messages from some account I didn't recognize. First one just said, "Still flipping chicken at that grease pit?" I rolled my eyes. Troll probably. I got those all the time. Comes with the territory, I guess, ever since my following crossed 100K. Most people followed for my self-love posts, body confidence stuff. A few just followed to hate. I'd learned to scroll past the noise, but then another message came a few nights later. "KFC suits you. You always smelled like burnt grease in high school." That one stopped me. High school? I barely ever mentioned high school. Not online, not to anyone. It wasn't a time I liked to revisit. Too many bad memories, too much crap I'd buried. I tried to play it cool, typed back, "Do I know you?" No reply. The silence stretched for days. I figured they'd moved on. Then, one night during close, the weirdness dialed up. Lisa was mopping, near the fryer, earbuds in, half humming some sad indie song. I was behind the counter wiping down the warming trays. The place was empty, except for one customer, a woman in the far booth. Hoodie pulled up, face mostly shadowed, thumb dancing over her phone. She'd been sitting there nearly an hour, her tray empty, drink untouched. Just lurking. Tony nudged me with a sigh. "Go tell her we're closing." I hesitated. Something about her gave me a weird vibe, like static in the air before a storm, but I plastered on my best fake smile and walked over. "Hey, sorry to bother you," I said, voice light, "but we're about to close up." She looked up. My stomach clenched. Her face didn't ring any bells, but her eyes... God, her eyes were wrong. Cold. Flat. Like glass marbles. "You really don't remember me, do you?" she said. I blinked. Should I?" She smiled. But it wasn't a smile. "Not really. Don't worry. You will." Then she slid out of the booth and walked out, leaving her soda untouched, her phone screen still glowing. The door swung closed behind her like a whisper. Lisa pulled out one earbud. "What was that about?" I swallowed. "No idea." Lie. I knew something was off. Way off. Later that night, back in my apartment, I curled up in bed and tried to shake the whole thing off. Probably just some weirdo. Maybe she mistook me for someone else. I almost believed that, until my phone buzzed. New message. My heart stuttered as I opened it. It was a photo of my building, taken from across the street. From outside. Text followed. "Still don't remember me?" I stared at the screen, stomach twisted in knots. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Who the hell are you?" No response. The rest of the night was a blur of shadows and imagined footsteps. Every creak in the hallway made my skin crawl. I barely slept. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just some psycho internet troll who dug up my address. Scary? Yeah, but not unheard of. Still, that feeling wouldn't leave me, like something had followed me home. I never thought she'd actually do something until I saw the post. It was on her Instagram, a photo of me sleeping. The caption read, "Sweet dreams." I stopped breathing. My bed, my room. The angle was from inside my apartment. Inside. I stumbled out of bed, flipping on every light, my pulse a thunderclap in my ears. The door was locked, so were the windows. Nothing looked disturbed. No broken glass. No forced entry. But she'd been here. I called the cops, hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. They came, walked around, asked questions, took a report, said they'd look into it. But I saw it in their eyes. Just another case of an online stalker. Gone weird. No prints, no signs of a break-in. They didn't believe me. But I knew. Someone had stood in my room, watched me sleep, and I hadn't even stirred. I almost called in sick that night. I should have, but I didn't want to give in to fear. Didn't want to seem paranoid. That was the mistake. The first couple hours of my shift passed normally. Lisa was in a decent mood and we joked like usual. Tony barked at us for messing around, but even he was smiling underneath. For a moment, it almost felt normal again until around 10 p.m. she walked in. Same hoodie, same dead stare. No order. Just sat in a booth and watched. I pretended not to notice, kept my head down, hands trembling as I wiped down the front counter. Then my phone buzzed. New message. Check your lipstick. My blood ran cold. Practically sprinted to the staff bathroom, fumbling with the zipper on my makeup bag. The lipstick looked untouched, sitting right where I always left it. But something about the message, it wasn't random. She knew. I twisted the tube, smeared a little on a napkin, then held it under the faucet. The red bled off slowly, but something else leached into the water, a pale, oily film. Then came the smell, chemical, sharp, wrong. My heart hammered in my chest. She'd tampered with my makeup. I didn't even get the chance to process it before I heard Lisa scream. I bolted out of the bathroom. The fryer was engulfed, flames shooting toward the ceiling. Lisa stumbled back, hand over her mouth, eyes wide with panic. Tony was already grabbing the fire extinguisher, shouting for us to get out. I turned to run, and froze. She was standing, in the doorway, not moving, just smiling. That same cold, hollow smile from before. I shoved past her, heart in my throat. Lisa right behind me, gasping for air. Smoke followed us out into the parking lot. Sirens howled in the distance. Tony managed to put the fire out, but the damage was bad. The entire kitchen was scorched and melted. The police showed up again, questioned us, searched the scene. They found something in the fryer, a melted plastic bottle filled with accelerant. Someone had set the fire, on purpose, and I knew who. I just didn't understand why. Not until the last message came through. Now you remember me. And then it all came flooding back. Senior year. There was a girl, quiet, awkward. She sat alone at lunch, always scribbling in this battered black notebook. Never caused trouble. Never. Talked unless spoken to. One day she tried to sit with us, me and my friends. Just sat down with her tray looking hopeful. My friends laughed, snorted, whispered. I didn't join in. But I didn't stop them either. She got up, red-faced and humiliated, and walked away. I never saw her again after that. She dropped out a few weeks later. Just vanished, and now she was back. I wanted to say I was sorry, that I didn't mean to hurt her, that I'd grown since then, but none of it mattered because the damage had already been done. I don't know where she is now, but I know she's still watching, waiting, and I know deep in my bones this isn't over. I swear I'll never eat KFC again. Never thought working there could actually put my life in danger. Sounds stupid, right? I mean, real danger at a fried chicken joint? But it wasn't the grease burns, the late-night chaos, or even the occasional meth head trying to rob us. The real threat, it was him. You think you know who you're working next to until it's too damn late. Back then, I was just another kitchen grunt. Not a manager, not even a shift lead. I made $10 an hour scrubbing fryers and burning my arms on heat lamps. I'd never imagined one dumb decision, one casual recommendation, would spiral into this nightmare. If I'd known what Nathan really was, I wouldn't have even said his name. It was a dead Tuesday afternoon when he first walked in. I was sitting up front on break, sipping a flat Pepsi and watching the sun melt through the greasy windows. My manager, Lewis, a lanky dude with a clipboard always glued to his hand, leaned out of the back and said, "Hey Ryan, do me a favor. Talk to that guy, will ya? Ask him the usual crap." I looked up. The guy was already standing there, like he owned the place. Tall, pale, maybe 23, 24. Neatly combed dark hair, pressed button-up, polished shoes. Weirdly, perfect, too perfect. He smiled, wide and eager. "Hey," he said, "I saw the now hiring sign. You guys still looking?" Yeah, I guess," I replied, trying to match his energy. "Got experience in fast food?" He nodded quickly. "Little Caesars, Taco Bell, nothing like this, though. KFC's different. Been obsessed since I was 10. The spices, the crunch, it's like magic to me." I chuckled. "Dude, it's just chicken. Greasy, soul-crushing chicken." But he just kept smiling. That kind of smile you hold too long. I went through the basic questions, hours, past jobs, dealing with cranky customers. He answered like he'd practiced in the mirror. Word for word. Later I told Lewis, "Yeah, seems solid. Bit intense maybe, but clean cut." Lewis shrugged and said, "Fine, he's hired. We need bodies." For the first month, Nathan was gold. Showed up early, stayed late, covered shifts, polite, quiet, not weird, just focused. But then, he changed. It started subtle. He began arriving 2, sometimes 3 hours early. Wouldn't clock in, just sat in the break room staring at the wall. At night he'd linger long after, closing, wiping down counters that were already clean. His appearance went downhill. Crisp uniform turned wrinkled, stained with something. His hair got greasy, unwashed, and his eyes, man, They sunk into his skull like he hadn't slept. In days, I remember one night. We'd closed at midnight. I was locking the freezers when I heard footsteps. Thought I was alone. I walked into the kitchen and there he was, standing completely still, back to me, facing the fryers. "Nathan?" No answer. I stepped closer. "You good, man?" He twitched like I'd pulled him out of a dream. Yeah, just thinking about stuff." I wanted to ask what stuff meant, but I didn't. I should have. Then the food started going missing, not entire meals, just the skin, the golden, crispy skin. Someone was peeling it off the chicken and tossing the meat. Louis was pissed, thought maybe a customer was sneaking back there. Then Lisa, this no-nonsense single mom who worked mornings, saw something. She caught Nathan crouched behind the supply boxes, shoveling handfuls of skin into his mouth like a starving animal. No shame. Just gnawing like he hadn't eaten in weeks, she told Louis. He called me into the office. Ran his hands through his thinning hair. "Ryan," he sighed, "I know you recommended him, but this isn't on you." Guy seemed normal at first. We couldn't have known. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the guilt. "You want me to talk to him?" He shook his head. "No, I'll handle it. Just giving you a heads up." About an hour later, I saw Nathan walking toward the office. He looked different. His eyes were sunken deeper than before, and sweat darkened his shirt like he'd just come out of a sauna. But when he saw me, he smiled. That same too-wide smile. "Hey, Nathan," I said, trying to sound chill. He blinked slowly. "You're a good friend, Ryan." Then he walked into the office. That was the last time I saw Louis alive. I figured they'd talk for maybe 10 minutes. I waited, 15, 30, an hour. Nobody wanted to knock. Everyone just felt it. The silence behind that door was heavy, unnatural, and then nothing. Stillness, not a word. Out of everyone, I was the one who got along with both of them. Maybe that's why I was the one who went to check. The office door creaked open under my hand. Empty. Or it looked that way at first. Louis's phone was still on the desk, screen dim. A faint metallic tang hung in the air, sharp, thick. Like rust or blood. Then I saw it. The body. Louis was crumpled beside the desk, limbs twisted unnaturally. His eyes were frozen wide open, a look of pure terror etched into his face. But worse, his skin. Jesus Christ, it was missing. Torn off in ragged patches. His arms, his legs, parts of his face stripped like something had peeled him. My stomach lurched. I turned, stumbling for the door. And that's when I saw him, Nathan, blocking the exit. Shirtless, drenched in sweat and streaked in blood. His chest rose and fell like he'd just run a marathon, and his hands, red, trembling, twitched at his sides. But it was his face that froze me. He was smiling. A huge wild grin stretched across his cheeks, eyes glassy, dilated. "Did you know," he whispered, voice low and breathless, "that the skin is the best part?" I staggered back. "Nathan, what the hell did you do?" He took a step forward, slow and reverent. "I get it. Now, Ryan. The flavor, the texture. Everyone thinks the secret recipe's locked up in a safe somewhere." He tapped the side of his head. "But it's not. It's in us." "You're sick," I said, my voice trembling. "They're gonna lock you away for this." Something snapped in his face, and the grin twisted into a sneer. "Sick? No, I'm free. I'm sick of being laughed at, judged. Everyone looks at me like I'm the freak, but I see it now. The truth. And you think I'm weird too, don't you?" He lunged. His bloody fingers grabbed my arm, nails digging into the skin. I didn't hesitate. I swung my fist hard, hitting him just behind the ear. He reeled sideways, groaning, but as I turned to run, he caught my ankle and yanked me down. We crashed to the floor. He straddled me, his hands clawing at my shirt. I kicked and shoved, desperate. I knew I wouldn't last long. Then I had an idea. "Nathan," I gasped. "Wait, listen to me." His grip faltered. Lewis is gone, man. That makes me the manager now. He froze, eyes narrowing. You're a great employee, I said, forcing calm into my voice. You don't want to get fired, do you? His expression twitched, conflicted, rage melting into something almost childlike. No. Then prove it. Go back to the kitchen. Show me you deserve Employee of the Month. For a breathless second, we just stared at each other. Then his whole body shifted, his eyes lit up, and that manic smile returned. Yes. Yes, I can do that. He leapt up, nodding fast. I'll be the best employee you've ever had. Good, great, go, get started, make me proud. And like that, he bolted from the office. I didn't wait. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and grabbed the phone with trembling hands. Called 911. By the time the cops arrived, Nathan had collapsed in the lobby, screaming, thrashing like an animal. Officers wrestled him to the ground while customers watched, some filming, some running, others just frozen. He looked at me one last time, blood-slicked face twisted with something between joy and fury, as they shoved him into the back of a cruiser. Later, I found out he never went to jail. He was committed to a psychiatric facility instead, and the police uncovered something even worse. His family had been off the grid for years. Nomads, serial killers. They'd been using Nathan, experimenting on him since he was a child. I quit that week, didn't clean out my locker, didn't say goodbye. I don't know if Nathan will ever get out. I don't know if he even knows what he did. But I do know one thing: I'll never eat KFC again. Hell, I never wanted to manage a KFC. I never even wanted to work in fast food. I never thought I'd end up here, working at a half-forgotten KFC surrounded by farmland and silence so loud it pressed in on your skull. But life doesn't really ask for permission before tossing you somewhere strange. Back in the city, I was grinding myself into dust. Panic attacks during subway rides, a constant ache behind my eyes, and insomnia that turned my nights into a blur of static. My doctor finally said, "Jim, either you slow down or your heart will." So I packed up, left behind a studio apartment, and a job that didn't care if I dropped dead, and moved to a place no one had ever heard of. That's how I ended up in Millfield, if you could even call it a town. A job posting had gone up for a night shift position at a KFC off Route 16, smack in the middle of nowhere. At first glance, it sounded peaceful, quiet, easy, but nothing about this place felt right. The moment I took the exit, the pavement turned to cracked asphalt and potholes that hadn't seen repair since the 90s. The road twisted through empty fields, no houses, no gas stations, just wheat and shadows. When the building finally emerged from the dusk, it stood like a relic. No lights out front, no cars in the lot. Just a faded sign with peeling letters and a single red flickering bulb that buzzed like it was dying. I sat in my car for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. Just a job, Jim, just a damn chicken job. Inside, the air hit me like heat from an attic, thick, musty, far too warm for a fast food joint. The walls weren't the usual white tile or plastic paneling. They were dark, polished wood, the kind that swallows light instead of reflecting it. And then I saw him, the Colonel. Every KFC has that familiar statue, usually plastic and cheerful, welcoming customers with that harmless southern grin. Not here. This one was metal, tarnished, rusted, and streaked with weird golden smudges like it had been crying brass tears. And its eyes... God, its eyes! They were too deep, almost hollow but not empty. Watching. Pretty impressive, huh? A voice cut through the silence, sharp and casual. I turned to find a man leaning against the counter. Clean cut, neatly, trimmed beard, khaki button-up tucked just a little too perfectly. His smile was the kind that tried to look warm but never touched his eyes. "You must be Jim," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Steven. Welcome to our KFC." I shook his hand, still glancing back at that statue. "Yeah, impressive," I said, lying through my teeth. He led me behind the counter into the kitchen where fluorescent lights hummed overhead and shadows clung to the corners. We stopped at a prep table where a woman was organizing plastic tubs of sauce. "This is Rebecca," Stephen said. She didn't smile. She barely looked at me. Early 30s, maybe. Hair pulled back into a tight ponytail. Her eyes were cold and calculating, like she was memorizing me for later. "You ever worked a KFC line before?" she asked. "Yeah, back in Brooklyn. Not too long ago. I'm used to it." I gave her a shrug, tried to sound casual. Rebecca tilted. Her head, that same unreadable expression still plastered on her face. "But you're not in the city anymore, are you?" I blinked. "No. Why?" She held my gaze a little too long. "Because things work different here." Stephen placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "Relax, Rebecca. We'll talk about that later." The two of them moved into the back kitchen, whispering. I stood there, awkwardly alone, the smell of grease and something older, almost metallic, clinging to the air. Something was off. Not just weird coworkers off. Wrong. "Come on," Stephen called. "Let's show you the rest." I followed them past fryers and cold storage until we stopped at a door that didn't match the others. No label, old iron handle. Looked more like a basement entrance than part of a restaurant. Stephen unlocked it with a key from his pocket and opened it slowly. "Let's show you how we really do things here." A wave of sound hit me, clucking. Dozens of chickens live, cramped in wooden cages under flickering bulbs. The smell was overwhelming. "See?" Stephen said, smiling too widely. "We're old school. None of that frozen factory crap. Fresh is best." Before I could respond, Rebecca stepped forward, reached into one of the cages and pulled out a struggling hen. In one swift, practiced motion, she twisted its neck with a crack. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared, frozen. My breath caught somewhere in my chest. Rebecca looked at me, dead-eyed. "You still feel relaxed, Jim?" "It's not difficult," Stephen said casually, wiping a fleck of blood from his cheek like it was nothing. Rebecca laid the twitching bird on the counter. Its body stilled, but its glassy eyes stared into the void like they had seen something wrong. "This is how the Colonel used to do it," Stephen went on, his smile stretching wider. "We honor his traditions." Blood speckled his face. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make my stomach churn. "I'm not doing that," I said, backing away. Rebecca didn't even blink. "City people are all the same. You eat them, but you won't kill them." "I don't have to do this," I said firmly, trying to anchor myself. Stephen's smile faded. His eyes went dull. "Colonel Sanders wouldn't be happy." I didn't give a damn what the Colonel wanted, I just needed out, but I didn't leave. Not then. And that's when things really started to rot. The next few days were unbearable. They kept at it. Stephen, with his quiet persistence, Rebecca with her hollow stares. "Do it, Jim," they'd whisper. "It's part of the job. You're not one of us until you do." I refused every time. But something was shifting. When I closed the restaurant alone at night, small things started happening. At first it was just odd. The Colonel Sanders statue seemed to face different directions each night, even though I never touched it. Then came the whispers. Low, garbled murmurs in the kitchen when I knew I was alone. I'd spin around and find nothing. But the air felt occupied. The lights flickered every time I looked away from that damn statue. The hum of the freezer turned into rhythmic clicks like breathing, and then the knocking started. Knock, knock, knock. At first I thought it was a late-night customer. I checked the lot. Empty. Still, the knocking continued. Steady, intentional. I crept toward the back door, heart slamming against my ribs. "Who's there?" I asked. Silence. I reached for the handle. Then, knock, knock, knock. From inside. The restaurant. I spun, eyes darting around. Nothing but fryer grease and flickering fluorescence. Except now the statue had moved. It was closer. Its hands. Red. Wet-looking. I went home shaking that night, heart still in my throat. Sleep didn't bring peace. In my dream, I was in the kitchen, a butcher's knife clutched tight in my hand. My arms were slick with blood. Rebecca and Stephen stood on either side of me, smiling like proud parents. At my feet lay chickens, dozens of them, mangled and limp. Then I saw something else. Something human. An arm. A leg. Fingers curled into claws. I woke up choking on air, drenched in sweat. But what made my skin crawl was the sensation, the blood. It still clung to my hands. I stormed into work the next morning, ready to quit. I didn't care if I ended up back in the city, I just wanted out. But Rebecca was already at the counter. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Jim. You look different." My gut twisted. "What do you mean?" Her grin widened. "Last night you finally did it." My breath caught. "What?" I whispered. "You chopped those necks like a pro." I staggered back. No. I had gone home. I locked up. I remembered, didn't I? Stephen appeared from the back, slapping me on the back with a grin. "You're one of us now," he said. My hands started to shake. Images flashed through my head. Steel, blood, the Colonel's twisted grin. And then I saw it. Outside, in the courtyard near the entrance, a new statue had appeared. Bronze, weathered like the rest. It looked exactly like me. Same uniform. Same stance. Same dead eyes. I never set foot inside a KFC again. I left Millfield, changed my name, started over. I don't tell people why. No one would believe me. Hell, I barely believe it. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, there's a knock at my door. Knock, knock, knock. And in the dark, through the window, I swear, I see him. Colonel Sanders, smiling, waiting. If my dad were still alive, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be mopping greasy tiles at 12:37 a.m., back aching, hands smelling like fryer oil and disappointment. I wouldn't be dodging the leering eyes of drunks stumbling in just before close, slurring orders they wouldn't remember come morning. And I definitely wouldn't be pretending not to notice him. The man in the corner, same booth, same Coke, never eats, never speaks, just watches. But life doesn't give a damn what we want. Dad died out of nowhere. Massive heart attack. 1 second he was laughing at something ridiculous I said about school, mouth half full of mashed potatoes. The next, his eyes went wide. He gripped the table with both hands, wheezing. Mom screamed. I froze. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought he was joking, but he wasn't. I called 9999. Paramedics tried. God, they tried. By the time they got him to the ambulance, he was gone. 42. I was 16. Too old to pretend I didn't get it, too young to handle it. Mom, she cracked. She stopped sleeping, stopped talking much. The bills didn't care. They kept coming, the house got cold, too quiet. So I got a job, KFC. Night shift. Cleaning, closing, cashing out. I thought exhaustion would be the worst part. I was wrong. It was him. I noticed him first 2 weeks in. It was nearly midnight. I was hauling the trash out back, dodging puddles from earlier rain. Parking lot was dead quiet, just that weird humming from the street lamps. When I stepped back in, I saw him. Corner booth. Hoodie pulled low, staring. Just staring at the table, a half-drunk Coke in front of him. I thought maybe he was homeless. Worn clothes. Hoodie frayed at the wrists. Jeans stiff like they'd never seen a washing machine. But something was off. He didn't fidget, didn't move, didn't even look tired, like he was waiting. He came in almost every night after that. Same time. Same booth. No food. Just the Coke. No ice. Never ice. The first time he spoke, it was a Tuesday. Dead quiet. I was wiping down the front counter, humming under my breath just to fill the silence. Then, "You lost someone, didn't you?" I nearly dropped the rag. His voice was rough, low, like gravel under tires. I turned, half expecting a prank, but it was him. He didn't smile, just watched. "Sorry," I managed. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing under the shadow of his hood. "Your face. Looks like someone who got hit too hard by life." I didn't know what to say. He smirked, not in a friendly way. I know that look. Doesn't go away. My gut twisted. "You want something?" I asked. He nodded once. "Just the usual." I poured the Coke. No ice. Always no ice. When I handed it to him, his fingers brushed mine. Ice cold. Not cold drink cold. I mean outside in winter without gloves cold. He smiled again, but his eyes stayed flat. The regulars at KFC? Easy to figure out. Drunk uni kids, tired security guards, single parents grabbing a late dinner for their kids. But him? He didn't fit. Once I asked my manager, Lisa, about him while we were restocking. Sauces. "Oh, that guy?" she said, not even looking up. "He's been coming here for months. Quiet, bit weird, but harmless." "Does he ever order food?" I asked. She shrugged. "Not that I've seen. Just the Coke." And then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Funny thing, though. He only comes in when you're working." She frowned. Her hands paused over the register. "Now that you mention it, no. Just Coke. That didn't sit right with me. People don't just loiter in fast food joints every single night without a reason, not without purpose." One night, just past close, I stepped out to lock the back door. The lot was empty. Rain had left dark puddles reflecting the orange flicker of the buzzing streetlight overhead. I juggled my keys, bleary-eyed and ready to crash. That's when I saw him, standing by the dumpsters. Still as a shadow, I nearly dropped the keys. "Jesus, you scared me," I blurted out. He smirked, just the edge of his mouth curling. "Didn't mean to." I hesitated. "Do you need something?" He flicked a cigarette into the dark. The ember glowed bright before it faded. "You ever think about how easy it is for someone to disappear?" The chill in my spine had nothing to do with the cold. "Not really," I said, trying to sound casual. He took a slow drag. Exhaled. "Most people don't. Not until it happens to them." I forced a laugh. "That's kind of a weird thing to say." He looked at me through the smoke, not smiling now. "I like you, kid. You remind me of me, when I was your age." I didn't know how to respond. I stood there stunned, watching as he turned and walked off, disappearing into the night like fog. That night, I went home with my stomach in knots. Something felt wrong. I couldn't shake it. A week later, I was eating dinner on the couch, TV humming in the background. I wasn't really watching until I saw his face. Grainy CCTV footage, news ticker flashing red, police searching for suspect in string of missing persons cases. I froze. It was him. Same hoodie, same face, same dead eyes. I fumbled for my phone and called Lisa. "Did you see the news?" I asked, heart pounding. She yawned. "What are you talking about?" "The guy, the one in the corner booth, he's on the news, missing persons cases." Silence. "You serious?" "Dead serious." She paused, then muttered, "I'll check the cameras." The next day, she pulled me into the office. Her face was pale, drawn tight. "You were right," she said, eyes glued to the monitor. "He's in the footage every night for the last 2 months." I swallowed. "What do we do?" She sighed, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the cops." That night, I worked with my nerves on fire. Every creak, every rustle felt like him. I kept glancing over my shoulder. At 10:45 p.m., the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. He was there. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, early 20s maybe. Her eyes were glassy, skin pale. She looked out of it, like she'd wandered into the wrong life. I met his gaze. He smiled. It was the last time I ever saw him. The next day, the police showed up. They'd found security footage of him leading the woman outside. She was reported missing that morning. Lisa and I gave our statements. Cops took the tapes. They searched the town, but he was gone. Vanished. I quit the job the following week. I wish I could say I moved on, that I forgot about him. But I didn't, because some nights, just as I'm about to drift off, I feel it. That slow, crawling prickle on the back of my neck, like I'm not alone, like he's still watching. Because people like him, they don't just disappear, and they never forget. I used to enjoy the late shift at KFC. There was a rhythm to it, quiet at first, then a surge of customers followed by the slow crawl of silence, the comforting scent of fried chicken, the mechanical hum of the fryer, the occasional shout or laughter from the kitchen. It was routine, familiar. But that night, something felt wrong. It had been raining nonstop for hours. Not just rain, sheets of it, thick and cold, turning the parking lot into a shimmering black mirror. The droplets beat a steady rhythm against the windows, hypnotic and lulling, like a lullaby played too slow. I was caught somewhere between drowsiness and drifting thought. The restaurant was empty. Just me and Josh, who'd wandered into the back about 15, maybe 20 minutes ago. I hadn't kept track. He had a habit of vanishing when the rush died down, probably holed up by the freezer, scrolling through his phone or fiddling with that damn Rubik's Cube he never let go of. I sat tapping my fingers against the counter, eyes fixed on the rain-warped glow of the neon open sign. Outside, a flickering streetlight cast long, crooked shadows across the lot, bending in and out of shape like ghosts stretching in the dark. That's when I noticed the car, a black sedan gliding in slow, deliberate. At first I figured it was someone looking for shelter, a late-night customer maybe, but instead of pulling into a parking space, the car rolled right up to the front door. Too close, way too close. The passenger door opened first. A girl stepped out, redhead. Her long hair clung to her face, soaked and limp like she'd been standing in the storm for hours. Even under the harsh glow of the overhead lights, her skin looked off, porcelain, perfect. Too perfect. She glanced up, her eyes locking on mine for just a second, then dropped her gaze. A moment later, the driver's door creaked open. Stupid, the man muttered as he stepped out. He was enormous, shoulders like a linebacker, dark skin, a thick, graying beard. But it wasn't his size that rattled me, it was his eyes, cold, focused, like a predator. Like he already knew everything about me. Sir? I stammered, taking a step toward the counter. You can't park that close to the door. He didn't answer, just stared. His lips curled, slow and deliberate, into a smile. A smile that made the hairs on my neck rise. Then I saw it. The blade. Not a box cutter. Not a pocket knife. A full-sized hunting knife, the kind you'd use to gut a deer. I'm going to kill you, he said. Just like that. Calm. Matter of fact. Like he was commenting on the weather. My body went cold, every thought in my brain crashing into a wall of disbelief. Surely I'd misheard. Surely this was a joke, but he wasn't laughing. His grip on the knife tightened. Rain slid down the steel, catching the light like a warning. My heart slammed in my chest. I could already picture that blade slicing through me. He took one step forward. I was about to bolt when he stopped. But first, he said, nodding toward the redhead, you're going to make us something to eat. It didn't make sense. None of it did. The storm, the knife, the girl. It felt like I'd slipped into some nightmare I didn't remember falling into. I wanted to scream, to run, to move. But my legs refused. I stood frozen, caught in his gaze. He tapped the flat of the knife against his palm. watching me with eyes that were empty. Not angry, not gleeful, just hollow. This wasn't his first time. "Move," he said, and I did. Before my brain could process it, my legs obeyed. Stiff, robotic, I turned and stepped behind the counter. My hands, numb and trembling, reached for a tray. The fryer hissed beside me, spitting angry bursts of grease into the air. The smell of old oil clung to my skin, thick and suffocating. I heard him, his boots thudding against the tile floor, slow, steady. He was coming around the counter, my stomach twisted. He wasn't staying on the customer side. The girl followed, drifting behind him like a shadow. Her clothes hung heavy, on her, sopping wet, clinging to her frame like they were trying to pull her down. Her shoulders curled inward, protective, like she was trying to disappear into herself. She didn't look up. "Faster," he said, voice sharp and cold. I fumbled with a pair of tongs, hands trembling. They slipped through my fingers and clattered to the floor. The sound echoed through the silent restaurant. I froze. The man exhaled, sharply through his nose. A disgusted sigh. "Can you women get any stupider?" he muttered, more to himself than to us. No one answered. The silence that followed was suffocating, so thick I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Outside, the rain continued to lash the windows, a constant, furious drumbeat. Then, creak. A soft sound from the back. Josh. I hadn't heard him return, but I knew he was there. I didn't dare turn around, couldn't give it away, but I could feel him just past the kitchen door, watching, breathing, waiting. "Please don't move," I begged silently. "Please stay hidden." But the man didn't seem to notice. His focus was on the girl now, eyes narrowing. He sneered, shaking his head. "Trying to run, huh?" he muttered, almost to himself. "Making me chase you in the rain?" His hand shot out, seizing a fistful of her hair. She barely reacted, just flinched, her fingers twitching at her sides. Then, with one swift motion, he sliced through it. A thick lock of her red hair tumbled to the floor, dark and limp like fallen leaves. She didn't move, didn't cry, just stood there shaking. That knife. He wasn't just trying to scare us. He was enjoying this. My stomach turned. Another creak. Josh again. I hadn't realized I'd stopped breathing until that moment, my lungs screaming for air. I wanted to yell at him to stay back. "Don't be a hero." But it was already too late. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Fast, violent. Josh burst through the kitchen door, arm cocked back. The Rubik's Cube, a blur of color, crashed into the man's skull with a dull, wet crack. The man stumbled, his head snapping sideways into the glass display. The glass spider-webbed with fractures as his temple slammed into it. The knife slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Gasped, backing away. Josh didn't hesitate. He dove forward, grabbed the blade, and flung it behind the counter, far out of reach. Then, sirens. That sharp, rising wail cut through the storm like a scream. Red and blue lights lit up the walls, the ceiling, the man's dazed face. It felt like waking up from a dream, one of those nightmares that clings to you thick and wet long after you've opened your eyes. 2 cops burst through the doors. "Freeze." Josh lifted his hand, stepping back slowly. I don't remember much after that. The officers tackled the man, wrestled him to the ground. The girl collapsed against me, sobbing. Her body trembled violently, soaking my shirt with rainwater and tears. Radio chatter crackled. Outside, the storm raged on like it hadn't noticed anything had happened at all. I just stood there, staring at the man on the floor, unconscious. The knife only inches from his outstretched fingers. If Josh had waited even 1 second longer, I would have been dead. The girl, she clung to me like she was afraid I might disappear. Her small, frozen hands gripped the front of my uniform. She didn't speak, didn't even cry anymore. She just held on. I didn't know her name. I didn't know where she came from. But in that moment, I knew one thing. Whatever hell she'd come from, It hadn't started in our restaurant. It had only followed her there. She felt like the only real thing in the room, while the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead and the tile floor gleamed with grime and spilled fryer oil. She clung to me like I was the only thing tethering her to earth. The cops had the man face down, one officer pinning a knee between his shoulder blades. He didn't fight, didn't squirm, just lay there, breathing, calm, quiet. That chilled me more than anything. He wasn't scared. He wasn't angry. He'd done this before. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" A voice pulled me back. One of the officers, a woman with sharp dark eyes, was standing in front of me. Her tone was clipped but gentle. I tried to answer, but my mouth felt like it was packed with sand. My head spun. I looked to Josh instead. He gave me a small nod, the kind that says, "You're okay now." That was all I needed. I'm fine, I croaked, voice raw. I glanced at the girl, who was still shaking, her face buried against my chest, her sobs coming in quiet, broken gasps. "She needs help," the officer nodded. "It's okay," she said softly, reaching for the girl with both hands raised like she was approaching a wounded animal. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. Another cop crouched beside the unconscious man, checking his pulse. "He's out cold," he said, then looked up at Josh. "Nice work, kid." Josh gave a weak, humorless chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. Guess all those Rubik's Cube tournaments finally paid off. Despite the knot in my throat, a laugh escaped me, a small, breathless sound. It was like releasing a valve. The pressure inside me started to bleed out, slow and shaky. I could have died, if Josh had hesitated. If he'd been slower by even 1 minute, I'd be on the floor right now, bleeding out, cold, gone. I turned to him, suddenly overwhelmed. "Josh," I whispered. He looked over, and for the first time since it all began, I really saw him. His hands were trembling. His jaw was clenched tight enough to crack. He was trying to play it cool, but he was just as shaken as I was. "Thanks," I said, voice cracking again. He shrugged, but the tension in his shoulders eased a little. "Yeah," he said, softer now. "Anytime." The officers stayed for a while longer, took our statements, bagged the knife, dusted the scene. They told us the man had a warrant out for his arrest, that he had a violent past, that the girl had been reported missing 2 weeks ago. I didn't ask what he'd done to her. I didn't want to know. Eventually, they left. The restaurant was still a wreck. Glass shattered across the floor, half-cooked food congealing on trays, the air thick with the smell of oil, sweat, and fear. Josh and I sat in the back, slumped into the plastic break room chairs, silent. The shock was a weight neither of us could lift. After a long pause, he exhaled, leaning his head back against the wall. "You still want to finish your shift?" he asked. Deadpan. I laughed. A real one this time, shaky but genuine. Not for all the free chicken in the world. Josh grinned. "Yeah, screw this place." We clocked out early. When we stepped outside, the storm had finally passed. The sky was dark, but the clouds had scattered. Everything smelled like wet, asphalt and electricity. The night was quiet again, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt alive. I never wanted to end up managing a fast food joint, let alone one that felt like a furnace on the edge of hell. But here I was, no college degree, no fallback plan, and life doesn't really give a damn about your dreams when rent's due. I'd bounced between grocery store stocking, gas station graveyard shifts, and janitorial gigs where drunks mistook me for their therapist. Eventually I landed here, Grease Pit number 7, the locals called it, telling myself it was just to keep the lights on. Temporary, I said. Just a paycheck until something better came along. 2 years later, and temporary had turned into muscle, memory. Same dead-eyed customers, same lunch rush stampede, same burnt oil perfume clinging to my skin. We had a decent crew, and I knew how to manage a kitchen full of teenagers running on sugar and resentment. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid. The weirdness didn't start all at once. It crept in. It was a Thursday around 4 p.m. That weird, in-between lull before the dinner rush. The kind of hour where you can hear time dragging its feet. I was wiping down trays near the self-serve soda fountain when I saw him. He was already standing by the counter, hands in his pockets, staring. Too hard at the menu, average build, thinning brown hair slicked back like he was going somewhere important. He wasn't. People like him never are. He didn't order right away, just loitered. When he finally approached, he wasn't holding his wallet. He stuck out. His hand instead. "How much does a polar bear weigh?" he asked, eyes twinkling. I blinked. "What?" "Enough to break the ice," he said with a chuckle. "I'm Dave." I forced a tight smile. "Mia," I replied, even though he was already squinting at my name tag. "Enjoy your meal. You have a beautiful name. It suits you." "Thanks," I said, trying to move away. "Wait," he said. "Would you go on a date with me?" I stopped, half turning. My brain scrambled for a response. I have a boyfriend," I lied. "That's okay," he said, unfazed. "Just give me your number, in case you change your mind." I clenched my jaw. "Sorry, I really have to. Get back to work." His eyes stayed on my face a second too long, not just watching, studying, like he was memorizing me. I'd dealt with pushy customers before, but something about Dave made my skin itch, like ants crawling just beneath the surface. He finally walked off, and I told myself that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I was working the late shift, running drive-through. Lobby was closed, crew running on fumes. I was halfway through counting sauce packets when the intercom crackled. "Hey, Mia." The voice turned my blood cold. Calm. Almost cheerful. Like we were old friends catching up over coffee. I froze. "What can I get for you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Just a small drink." I rang it up, hands a little shaky. When he pulled up to the window, I braced myself. No card in his hand, no money. Instead, he held out a small red box, like a ring box. "A gift for you," he said. "I can't accept gifts from customers," I told him, heart thudding. He didn't leave, just kept holding it out like I was supposed to take it, like saying, "No wasn't an option, I didn't move." "You don't even want to see what's inside?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, please pull forward." His eyes bored into mine, face blank now. Something unreadable passed behind his gaze, like he was storing this moment, filing it away. Then he drove off. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. And the next time I saw him, he wasn't in his car. He was standing by my back door, holding the red box. His smile faltered when I didn't take the box. "Come on," he said, voice just above a whisper. "It's just a little something." I kept my hands at my sides. "I can't accept gifts from customers." A long pause hung between us like a fog. "Come on," he repeated, but his tone had changed, thicker now, something darker curling around the edges. "Just a little something." "No," I said, firm this time. His expression hardened, eyes glassy. He didn't say another word, just pulled off without his drink. I should have known that wasn't the end. Later that night, the phone at the front counter rang. My coworker Josh answered. "Yeah? Yeah, Mia's working tonight. Can I take a message?" I spun around. "Who was that?" He shrugged. "Some dude asking for you. Said he left something earlier." After that, Dave started coming through the drive-thru more often. Sometimes he ordered something small, but mostly he didn't order at all. Just watched. He'd pull through, stop at the window, stare, then drive off without a word. Other times I'd catch him standing across the street, half hidden behind the edge of the building, just watching. "Who's that guy I saw you talking to yesterday?" asked Cassie, another crew member. "One night while we cleaned the fryers." "Just a customer," I said quickly, shrugging. "You looked really, I don't know, spooked," I told my manager. He shrugged it off. He's just a customer. Ignore him. I tried. God knows I tried. But one night I got off late, around 1 a.m. I was exhausted, my skin smelled like fryer grease, and all I wanted was to shower and pass out. I pulled onto the dark, mostly empty road, blasting the heater in my beat-up Honda. Then, I saw it. His car. In my rearview mirror. At first I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe I was overreacting. Then he flashed his headlights. Once. Twice. I turned off the main road. He turned too, tried another way. He stayed behind me. My pulse thudded in my ears. My grip on the steering wheel went numb. He was following me. I took the long way home, heart pounding, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. Finally, I spotted a police cruiser parked on the shoulder. Without thinking, I slammed the gas and flashed my brights at them. They flipped their lights. Dave slowed, swerved into the next lane, made a lazy U-turn, and disappeared into the dark. The officer pulled me over, but before I could even say a word, I burst into tears. I told him everything. They couldn't do much without proof, but they offered to patrol my neighborhood more frequently. It helped. A little. That night I didn't sleep. Every shadow looked like him. Every noise outside sent me flinching. The next night he came through the drive-thru again. Before he could open his mouth, I leaned through the window and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Dave, I will never go on a date with you. Leave me alone. Don't mistake basic human politeness for interest. This is harassment." The kitchen fell quiet. My co-workers froze mid-shift. Customers turned to look. His eye twitched. "Really?" he said, his voice shaking. "That's how it is?" "If you follow me again," I said coldly, "I'm calling the cops." His face twisted. Something between anger and humiliation. And something else I couldn't name. He drove off. I thought that was it. Until Josh handed me an envelope an hour later. "He said to give this to you," he said wide-eyed. Inside was a card, handwritten. "Mia, you have the prettiest eyes. I'd love to put them in a jar on my desk so I can look at them all day." I didn't hesitate this time. I called the cops, filed a report. This time they believed me. I got a restraining order, quit my job, changed my address, moved cities. But I still don't feel safe because even now, years later, every time I drive home alone, I check my rearview mirror, just in case.